Good morning. Welcome back to Tea and a Reasoning. Today is episode 4. It's been a minute. I took like a week off, but I'm planning on filming this episode vlog style. So I hope you enjoy. It's gonna be kind of like a day in the life, but it would be accompanied by what we're talking about today in this episode. We will be talking about boundaries. Today's tea is jasmine. Just plain hot water tea bag. It's delicious. What tea are you guys drinking today? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoy the video and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. So feel free to share them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And if you feel like it, please share this with a friend. Cheers. Let's define boundary. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line. Similar words include border, partition, dividing line, borderline, etc. Now let's define personal boundaries. A personal boundary is a limit or a rule that we set for ourselves within relationships. A person with healthy boundaries can say no to others when they want to, but they are also comfortable opening themselves up to intimacy in close relationships. Do you feel uncomfortable setting boundaries? Why do you think it's so hard to set boundaries? I think setting boundaries is hard because for some reason, we're all socialized to think that being told no is a bad thing, or that being agreeable is much better. I don't know. I remember on 2 different occasions being asked a question and I simply said no. There was no negative intention behind saying no. It was simply just my answer to the question. But on each of these occasions, each person, because this happened with 2 different people, they both had negative reactions to me saying no. One of them thought I was being mean, and the other thought I was offended by their question. I found it so interesting because I meant nothing by it. I simply just said no. I feel like we say things like, no is a complete sentence, or saying no is okay. But I feel like we just say that because it's popular to say it. Why are we uncomfortable with being told no? I find that people who get offended by another person setting a boundary are often people who don't have boundaries themselves. It's hard to set boundaries if you're a people pleaser. Trust me, I know. For some reason, we associate boundaries with being mean, and so I find that people don't set boundaries because they don't want to be perceived as a mean person. It's interesting because I used to think this way, but it came to a point where the resentment that came from overextending myself or letting people get away with doing things that I wasn't okay with was far outweighing my feelings about being perceived as mean. No one can read your mind. They can't tell if you don't like something unless you tell them. Relationships would be so much healthier if we all got comfortable with setting boundaries. I personally would rather let someone know what my boundaries are than not saying anything and then resenting the person for crossing a boundary they had no idea about. Boundaries are good. They help to take care of you and also your relationships. If you aren't available to go somewhere with someone, it's okay to say no. If you don't want people to wear shoes in your house or eat in your car, it's okay to tell them that. When I just started acknowledging my own boundaries, it was hard to voice them. You're going to get pushback because people would love nothing more than to have their way, and that's normal. Especially if you hadn't had this or expressed this boundary in the past and now you're introducing a boundary. It's going to be hard for it to stick because the person is used to doing whatever it is that you're now setting a boundary about. And so they're going to push back, and you're probably going to have to voice this boundary multiple times. And sometimes if you have to do it too many times, you might just have to move on from that relationship. So for me, when I just started setting boundaries, I was very aggressive with setting my boundaries because for a long time, I stifled them in order to seem agreeable. In fact, I associated boundaries with being selfish. And that's because when I was younger, whenever I would say no to something, or if I said I didn't like something or I didn't want to do something, I was met with being called selfish. And so because of this, I essentially became the most agreeable person you could ever find. So I'd feel uncomfortable saying no. I would essentially just morphed into a people pleaser. And so because it took me so long to be able to feel comfortable voicing my boundaries, I was very aggressive with it because I wasn't doing it in a healthy way to begin with. And so over time, I learned that boundaries are good. They're not a bad thing. And I also learned how to set boundaries with compassion. And so through therapy, I was able to unlearn that setting boundaries is selfish or that it's a bad thing. And so now I'm learning to set boundaries with compassion, both for myself and for the person I'm setting boundaries with. I know a lot of us, especially recovering people pleasers, have clung on to the whole concept of boundaries and setting boundaries, but it's important to also recognize that boundaries are not for us to build a wall between us and people that we're in relationship with, whether it be romantic, platonic, familial, whatever it might be. It's not for us to build a wall and block someone out. It's for us essentially to build a bridge between us and whoever it is that we're in a relationship with. Setting boundaries with compassion in your relationship allows you to gently explain to a person that you care about and who cares about you what makes you feel safe and comfortable in that relationship, right? And if this person loves you and cares about you, they will have no problem respecting your boundary. And it goes both ways. That person is able to set a boundary with you and you're able to respect it, right? So not having boundaries will leave you with resentment that over time will be a detriment to your relationships and also to you as well. So be honest with yourself about your boundaries and your limits. And if you're worried about people perceiving you as mean, you need to get to the root of why you feel that way. Boundaries are good for you, and it'll take practice for sure in overcoming that initial discomfort that comes with setting boundaries. It's okay to let people know what you don't like, or if you can't give what they are asking for. Setting boundaries is also a for sure way to build self-trust, because you're proving to yourself that you're capable of taking care of yourself. In addition to setting boundaries in your relationships, it's also necessary to set boundaries with yourself as well, right? Because not only are you in relationship with others, but you're also in relationship with yourself, and you're with yourself 24/7. And that's one way also to practice setting boundaries. You will definitely get pushback from yourself, and it might not be in a necessarily it won't necessarily be in the vocal sense, but it will be in the form of resistance. So for example, let's say you want to stick to a specific bedtime. In resisting that boundary, you'll find that you're up beyond your bedtime watching shows, right? And so, as I said before, setting boundaries, whether it is with yourself or in your relationships, is going to take practice, and it's going to take repetition as well for it to stick. And so, setting boundaries is a form of self-respect. And it's a form of self-care and self-preservation, because if you're consistently overextending yourself and saying yes to everything, when will you have time to take care of yourself? When will you have time to fill your own cup so that you'll be able to pour into your relationships? Do you get what I'm saying? And so I feel like once we start getting comfortable with setting boundaries with ourselves and with others, relationships will start to become so much more healthy. I know it can become discouraging when you're setting boundaries and you're getting constant pushback, and it gets discouraging. I can attest to that for sure. And sometimes it feels like there's no hope for that relationship because this person is consistently overriding your boundaries. And to be honest, sometimes that's a sign that that relationship just needs to be let go of. And that's okay. I think the most important thing in terms of the whole concept of setting boundaries is that the two people who are in a relationship, and it doesn't have to be romantic, it could be any kind of relationship. The most important thing when it comes to setting boundaries is that both person listens, understands, and cares enough to really listen and understand, and allow that person to voice their boundaries and for them to respect it. And it's also a two-way street. So one person isn't the only one in the relationship that gets to set boundaries. Both parties do. And so as we end, I hope that you'll start to get comfortable setting boundaries for yourself and your relationship.